Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now is former GOP presidential candidate and the current chairman of the Campaign for Liberty, Congressman Ron Paul. And Representative Paul, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you.
Well, you've condemned reports that the Obama administration is secretly collecting data from the phone calls of millions of Americans. What's your main concern here?
The right to your privacy and enforcing the Fourth Amendment. That's what concerns me. I think it's a very, very serious matter and very, very dangerous. And I think the abuse has been going on for a long, long time. Nobody should be surprised, but it's incremental. It's gotten a lot worse in the last 10 years, and it's ongoing. And the way I see it, if the people don't wake up, it'll get a lot worse.
The chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Dianne Feinstein, says that the PRISM surveillance program has foiled multiple attempted terrorist attacks inside the United States, including a 2009 plot to bomb New York City's subways. She says it played a role in the case against an American who scouted targets in Mumbai, India, before a deadly terrorist attack there in 2008. Representative Mike Rogers says that PRISM has indeed prevented a terrorist attack. Do you believe this program has protected national security?
Well, if they can find one incident, they'd be lucky. They are exaggerating. But even if they did, is that an excuse to throw the whole Constitution out the window? So you could have a lot of safety by a lot of security. I mean, you could stop all child beating and wife beating by having a camera in everybody's house, and you give up total privacy. But nobody's proposing that. But that's essentially what they're saying, is that in order to maybe catch somebody, all Americans have to give up all their privacy. And besides, the statistics they cite are grossly exaggerated, because I think it was New York Times that reported that 14 out of 22 of these so-called incidents where they saved us from these horrible attacks were actually sting operations. They're entrapments, and the FBI's involved, and they get out of hand, and then they announce, oh, we just saved you from ourselves. So, no, I think that's all to build fear and intimidate people and make them willing to sacrifice their liberties at the expense of thinking they're going to be safer. But we were warned a long time ago that if we develop that attitude, not only do we sacrifice our liberties, we're actually less safe.
Yeah, so how do we balance U.S. national security while protecting civil liberties at the same time? Should we throw out this program altogether, or should we just impose more restrictions?
Certainly you throw it out altogether. The Patriot Act, the FISA courts, secret courts, obey the Constitution. And the Constitution provides ways to get a search warrant. But these blanket searches of everybody and giving up all your privacy is insane. And it's the position of an authoritarian dictatorship that wants this type of power. So if you get a legitimate warrant, there should be probable cause. I mean, why did we give up on this? You know, so I think this whole idea that you have to have a balance and give up so much of your freedom for more security is a very dangerous notion.
Now, President Obama has come out saying that the programs are approved by Congress, they're overseen by the courts, and carefully constrained. How do you respond to that? And do you believe him when he says to Americans that we're not listening to your phone calls?
Well, I wonder what they're doing. You know, if they're not listening, in order to make use of it, if they're not listening, why are they doing it? They have to listen to find out who the bad guys are that they think they're going to catch. So they have to listen to them. What they're saying is, as we speak on the phone today, that they're not literally listening right now, but there's a recording of this made, and there will be, flags, and then they can go back and listen to what they want. But then they go back and they say, oh, then we'll get the proper search warrant. From where? From some secret court? These FISA courts are just totally secret, and it's just not the way a free society is operated. It's not proper under our Constitution. It doesn't make us safer, and it's just such a dangerous notion to think that governments have this prerogative. Our Constitution was designed to make sure the government was open and the people had their privacy. Today, people in Washington, the dominant theory is that government has to be secret and you and I have no privacy. So they've turned this whole thing on its head, and we're doing exactly opposite of what we should be doing in a free society.
In light of the recent scandals involving the IRS targeting of conservative and religious groups, and in light of the AP phone records scandal and the targeting of Fox News' James Rosen, are you especially concerned that this program could be abused?
Well, I'm concerned that we have an income tax that always leads to problems like this. Matter of fact, even if they obeyed all the so-called rules of the income tax, it's devastating because it's so vicious in its destruction of wealth. So the income tax is the culprit. The fact that they abuse the income tax and it becomes politicized is a natural tendency. That's what governments do, and it's not the Obama administration. This has been going on for decades. I mean, it's not a new history. Everybody knows that Nixon and others did it, and they have their enemies list, and they prosecute their enemies. So no, it's a natural sequence of giving too much power to government, whether it's eavesdropping or the IRS or whatever. People are blinded by the fact that they think government's going to take care of us, and governments can't take care of us. They can't provide perfect safety, and they can't provide perfect economic equality and prosperity. People have to do that for themselves. Governments are supposed to be designed to keep people, to provide liberty and protection and due process of law, but not to try to provide, this perfect society where everybody's perfectly safe and everybody is taken care of in an absolute manner. That is a course to disaster.
Edward Snowden has revealed himself as the whistleblower behind the NSA leak, knowing full well he faces jail time. NSA Director Mike Clapper says such a disclosure was reckless, and the Justice Department has launched a criminal inquiry. Does Snowden's leak hurt U.S. national security, and what, if anything, should happen to him?
Well, I mean, he should be heralded as a hero for releasing the truth, about our government. The most important thing is knowing the truth about things. You can't act if you don't. This idea that government should be totally secret and we don't know the truth, I think, is the most dangerous thing that we can have. So, yes, he knows he's broken a law, but they have broken the Constitution, which is much worse. He's trying to save us from ourselves by telling us what is going on, and it is excessive. So he knows the risks, and he knows that he's a target now. He suspects they'll try to kill him. They'll try to put him in prison or execute him. But he felt so strongly about telling the American people what's going on. But, I've used the saying that, in an empire, truth becomes treason. So he tells us the truth about what our government's doing, so he becomes, he'll be charged with treason. And we pass laws to protect people who tell us the truth about government. But if we find out somebody has told the truth about government, whether it's the CIA agents that told us about torture, that CIA agent is now in prison. So we have lost the fundamental purpose of what government should be in a free society. And for that, we are suffering economically, we're suffering from the constant wars, and we're suffering from the loss of our liberties.
Now, the Senate these next few weeks will debate bipartisan immigration reform legislation. If you were still in the House, could you vote for this legislation, and does it have any chance of passing the House?
Well, I haven't, looked at that in detail as I would if I'm getting ready to vote for it, but vote on it. But Campaign for Liberty, our organization, has come out making some points about some very, very dangerous parts of the immigration bill, and that's the biometric national ID, identifier, which I think is very, very dangerous. So even without looking at the details of all the other things, which I'm sure there's some pro and some con in the other, but the national ID card or biometric identification, I think, is very bad. Once again, another intrusion in our privacy, and I think very detrimental.
Turning to Syria, White House officials say the Obama administration could decide this week to approve lethal aid for the Syrian rebels and will weigh the merits of a less likely move to send in U.S. air power to enforce a no-fly zone over the civil war-racked nation. You have always been very cautious about U.S. involvement abroad. What do you make of the Obama administration's handling of Syria?
It's crazy. I mean, we have all these wars that we're losing. We've lost in Afghanistan, total chaos in Iraq. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and now there is. Al-Qaeda's over there helping the rebels in Syria, and now we're joining the Al-Qaeda and helping them out to overthrow Assad. It makes no sense whatsoever, and it doesn't make good sense for our national security. It makes no economic sense, and why we should support a bunch of guys that we have no idea who they are and what they're doing, and help. I mean, how have we improved things in Libya? How have we improved things in Egypt? I think ultimately, this policy is going to backfire on not only the United States, it's going to backfire on Israel, because I think these countries that end up taking over, or the rebels that take over, are usually radical Islamists who are going to be more anti-Israel, and yet we're supporting them as well as Israel supports this. So I think it's a foolish policy. And I think the policy that the founders talked about is non-interventionism, mind our own business, no nation building, stay out of the internal affairs of other nations. So that, I think, is fantastic. I think that's the foreign policy that Americans should endorse, and more people are starting to realize the foolishness of these past 10 years of endless war, and now there's a perpetual war against global terrorism, and they're not even able to define it, and then they don't want to even realize that it's our drone warfare and our arbitrary killing of people around the world is the reason people want to kill us. Mm-hmm. And unless we realize that, this is going to go on for a long time. It's going to get a lot worse, and it will only end with our bankruptcy, which is not too far off.
All right, the GOP in 2014, what shape are Republicans in your view, and can they win back the Senate?
Well, they have this tremendous opportunity because the American people now are sick and tired of Obama, especially on this surveillance, spying on all Americans. And we have Republicans now, they're the best champions of Obama. It's crazy. They get the best political issue, but they're wrong philosophically, and they come down on the side of saying, oh, this is what we like about Obama. As long as they keep doing this, it's actually, from my viewpoint, it's irrelevant whether you have Republicans in there that endorse perpetual war on global terrorism and perpetual war against American civil liberties. It doesn't matter whether you have Obama doing it or George Bush doing it. Mm-hmm. The American people suffer nevertheless. So what we need is a revamping of basic understanding about what the Constitution says, and have a better understanding and better desire and determination to live in a free society.
Last question for you, Congressman Paul. Your son, Senator Rand Paul, is said to be considering a presidential bid in 2016. Can you give us some insight into his plans, and what, if any, words of encouragement have you offered him?
We haven't talked about it.
All right, we'll leave it there. Do you hope he throws his hat in the ring?
Well, I want him to do what he wants to do.
All right, well, we'll be watching. Congressman Ron Paul, thanks so much for being with us today.
Very good.
Okay, and thank you for watching Newsmax TV.